Hello, so today I'm going to be showing you how I made this glitter texture. This is a project that I created for one of my classes, Senior Studio, and this is my project for the BFA exhibition. And I was very proud of this glitter texture, so I wanted to showcase it and show you how to make it. I included it in a couple different areas around here, mainly this dome, which is very large. It's also on these lights over here. And move up and down. There are some butterflies flying around that also have the texture on them. And these flowers also have them. It has very subtle movement and a little bit of transparency. And I'll show you how to get this effect in your own project. So I just set up a new project with a first person level, just the basic one, and I created a new level and just set a couple things up like hiding the actor in here and making a sky dome that is night for better lighting. And the first thing that I'm going to do is create a new shape, and I'm just going to use a sphere. This is what we'll put our texture on, just so that you can see how it looks in the real space. Oof. I'm going to scale it up a bit too, so that we can have it be a little bit larger. Oh, there we go. So this is what we'll put the material on. So just to be transparent, I did not just make up the glitter texture myself. I followed two other YouTube tutorials that I'll overlay on the screen here right now. These two tutorials helped me figure out how exactly I could make this and what programs I would need to use to make extra materials. And one of the tutorials actually shows you how to make this glitter RGB texture in Material Maker, which is a free software that's an alternative to Adobe Substance 3D Painter. So I'll show you how this texture looks. It's just an overlay of R, G, and V circles, spheres, overlapping on here. And these separate channels are actually what help make this sort of animated effect when you move around. So to start out, we're going to want to go into the materials here, and I'm going to make a new material. And I'm going to call this m_glitter texture. So I'm gonna just put this directly onto our sphere already. Oops, that's not the material. Here it is. We'll put that right there. And then we're actually not gonna edit this quite yet. We're gonna start with a material function. Here it is in the advanced materials. So we'll call this MF glitter texture. So we'll open that up in the editor right here. Okay, so this is going to be one of the larger node setups that we create for the material function. And we'll start out by adding the texture coordinates. Oops, text coord. There we go. Then we want to add a function input. We'll put this here, and we're going to call this input glitter scale. We'll create another function input. We'll call this one input glitter offset. And then we'll create one more called input glitter, oops, glitter height ratio. Okay, so now that we've got all of these lined up here, we're gonna create some, oops, we'll create some expressions here, some parameters. We'll make this one 0.4 and connect it to that preview there. Then we'll make another one and set this one at 3. And one more for this, which will make 0.05. And just connect all of those here, and they show these red colors. So to start, we're gonna divide this right here, the texture coordinates, with the glitter scale. And then you want to drag in that glitter RGB texture that you can make in Material Maker. And you're going to connect this divide to the UVs here. Then I'm going to add a bump offset node. And we're going to connect the offset here to the height of the bump offset. And we want to connect, let's see, the height ratio to the height ratio input. Then I'm going to make a mask here, a component mask, and you want to make sure for this only R and G are selected. This is going to pull from the texture sample just the R and the G fields. And I'm also going to connect the glitter offset to this mask. Then I want to add here. And I'm going to just add the divide from up here and this mask together. And then for later, I'm going to put another add here. I'm going to do this last where you can add animation to the texture. So we'll just put that here and label it UV animated. And then this isn't in use yet, but we'll connect it to the coordinates here so that it can move things. All right, and then we'll move these down. And I'm going to add another instance of this texture. And we're going to connect this bump offset to the UVs here again. This is going to create an overlapping of these two materials that's going to give a good effect when you move around, which we can't see yet, but that's what it'll do. So we're going to multiply these together so that they overlay each other when they're on the material, we're going to take the RGB channels from both of these. And then we want to add a breakout float 3 component. So this is going to break the RGB channels into 3 different sections so that you can actually manipulate each one individually. And here I'm going to add the R and the G together. And then I'll add those and the B channel together. Then I'm going to put a power node here to amplify the effect of these. And I'm also going to create a new function input again. And we'll call this one input glitter power. Here I'm going to give this a parameter. Also, I'm hitting 1 and then left click to make this pop up real fast. Otherwise, you can just add a parameter here. Vector parameter. You can turn it into something that has a name here. But we're going to take this, and we're going to plug that into the exponent for the factor of the power. Then I'm going to put a saturate here just to make the effect show up even more. And another multiply node before we plug it in there. That's going to take this saturate, and I'm going to create another function, material function. Or the input function. And for this one, I'm going to give it a parameter of 50. And we'll call this one, oops. We'll call this one glitter brightness. So we want to turn this up a lot so that the particles show up nicely. Alright, I'm going to space these out a little bit and connect that right there. And then you're going to connect it to the output result, and this is what you get. So this isn't animated yet, but when you move it around, you can see that these two overlays and the separation of the channels, making it black and white, actually makes the effect look really nice by itself as long as you're moving around it, but it's not going to move when it's still. So this is where we're going to add a little bit of animation to it so that it moves and glitters even when you're not moving around the actual object that's going to have the texture. So first I'm going to add a time node here. And then I'm going to add a parameter, but I'm going to convert it here and I'm going to call this drift speed. So this is going to control the speed of your animation. And I want mine to be a bit slower, so I'm going to make it 0.08. And we're going to multiply these nodes here. There and there. So to make this effect move smoothly, I use both a sine and a cosine to make a sort of like swirling animated texture that looks nice. So we'll add sine here and then cosine. You're gonna take the output of the multiply node and put it to both of these. And then you want to multiply these effects together. We're gonna put this one here, and we're actually gonna add another parameter. We'll convert this and name it amp x, so it's gonna control the x direction of movement. We'll multiply that right there, and I'm gonna make this 0.05, so it's still not very high. And then for this one, you'll want to multiply it with an amp y parameter that will make, convert this to a parameter, and there we go. I'll add that right there, put this here. And for this value, we'll make it also 0.05 so that it moves evenly with the x. And then to combine these, we're gonna make a make float 2 node. And we're gonna take the outputs from these and connect them to the x and y so that it moves together. And the result is gonna be added here. And immediately you see the effect that this has. It makes all of the glitter particles move very slowly in a circle, and you can't see the circle motion very much because of the speed, so it kind of just looks like there's glitter moving all over the texture. You can, of course, speed this up or slow it down even more, but it adds this sort of nice twinkle and movement to the texture. Alright, so that's all for the material function. This is the full nodes that we have for this. And next we're going to move on to making the actual material that we put on our sphere. So now that we have this nice glitter texture function here, the material function for the glitter texture, we'll open up the material for a glitter. And this is what you're going to see, just the basic material output. So for this one, because I wanted to make it look sort of like colored glass, I changed this from opaque to additive and left this as default lit. And now you're not going to see anything here because it doesn't have any emission, but the emission is actually how I get it to show up nicely and look bright when you put it into your project. And I also made it two-sided so that you can see it on both sides of any object. I believe that's all of the settings that I changed here. Here's- Oh, we also actually put this here and we make that false for the usage. This is used with skeletal mesh. And then I also checked used with nanite. These are correct here. Yep, that's all of the settings for this here. So mainly what you want to have is the additive right here if you're creating something that looks like emissive glass. For two-sided, that just depends on the object, whether you're going to be seeing it on both sides or not. You don't have to have it, but it'll only show up on one side if you don't put that. So for this one, what we want to do first is drag in that material function that we made, and you can see that we have all of the input functions that we added, or the function inputs that we added over here, all of these large red boxes. So these are all things that you can actually change now in the material in case you want to alter the settings of the function a little bit. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is change the brightness by adding a parameter here. Oops. There we go. And I'm gonna turn this all the way up to 1000. There we go. So we can already see that affecting this here. And we'll add that onto the glitter brightness. And then I'm gonna create another parameter. And I'm gonna control the glitter scale with this one. I'm gonna make it much smaller and plug it in right here. That's to the glitter scale. And then what I want to do is make a 1 minus here and plug the result into here. That's going to reverse the colors of this so that the glitter pops and then the glass looks more transparent. And I'm going to add a multiply node. We're going to take the result of that and put it into here, and we're going to turn this one down a bit because this is going to affect the emission. We don't want that to affect it too strongly. Then I'll add another multiply node right here. And then I'm gonna make, oops, a constant vector 3 again, and I'm gonna convert this to a parameter so that we can change it, and I'm gonna call this glitter color. So you can make this whatever you want, actually, and this is gonna just change the color of the glitter, and right now it's like super small so you can't see it very well on this one, but we'll make a couple instances where it shows up better for different types of objects. But we'll just make this one purple for now. And you want to plug in the RGB channel into the bottom multiply input. Then I'm just going to saturate this so that the colors pop even more. And then we'll plug that into our emissive. Then I'm also going to make the opacity higher for this right here. And then I'm going to make a lerp node. And I'm going to plug this into the alpha channel for that. And I'm going to make another component 3 vector and convert that to a parameter. And this will be our base color. I'll plug the RGB channel here into B. And we'll keep A at 0. And then you actually want to take this and connect it to the metallic and specular. So I went back, and the reason that we're getting an error here is because I forgot to check use preview value as default over here for all of these. So make sure that when you add these, you check preview value as default. So we're going to do that for every single one of these here, because we're not putting a value for all of these when we go into our actual material glitter textures. So now it should work. Okay, and that fixed it. So now we can see this here. It just looks like a clear sphere right now. You can't really see the glitter texture on it. It's very small. You can slightly notice it if you're looking very closely, but it is there. Actually, if I make this scale go back to 1, you can see it. Yeah, there we go. So So here you can control the scale. You can control the brightness. You can make it brighter, less. And you can also see actually the colors of this here that we put. Let's see if like you can change it here. The base color is a bit harder to control. This one we would have to set more over here. Let me make that a lot brighter. Yeah, so we can set the base color right here actually to make it look nicer. And then this one doesn't control it as much, but it is important to have it there for the metallic and specular components. So we can just leave that as whatever we want. But it does affect the nice fading of the glitter here, so you want to keep it in there. Yeah. And here we can see that it's two-sided by going into the sphere. But yeah, I'm going to turn this back down. Back to 0.05 because I want it to be very small for the next thing that I'm going to do. So now we can actually see it on the material here. And I want to turn the lighting way down so that we can see it more clearly. And I'm actually going to take these stars and make them a lot less bright so that you notice the texture a bit more. Apparently that's a little bit too dark. Let me try to do that. So the reason that you can't see the glitter super well is just because it's super tiny, as we saw when I was making the material. That is on purpose, but if you want to scale up the sphere, actually, we'll make it 100. So you can see, actually. Let me see if I can turn off these stars. There we go. So if you were inside the dome like you are in my project, actually, I need to turn the collision off also. Here you can just set it to no collision to make sure that it's not affecting anything. And there we go. So now you can actually move around on this plane and you can look and you're inside this huge dome, like in my project, where there is a moving glitter texture. And there you can see the movement actually on the shine of this, how it's going in a circle to animate it. But since there are two overlapping planes that make up the texture when we move, it creates this nice effect where some of the particles are brighter and some of them are not as bright. Yeah, you can change the color, the size, the brightness of all of these things based on whatever you want for the object, and you can even make it opaque if you want to. I just like the look of having a transparent glitter texture. I think it looks very nice. But yeah, all of those parameters that we made make it so that you can change the outcome of this based on the object that you want it to be on. So I'm gonna put the scale back to super small because we're gonna try to make a couple different instances now. Okay, so this is gonna look super similar to the regular material that we made, but I'm gonna show you how you can make this same glitter texture be used for several different objects and change the colors and the size and everything as you want it, but you don't have to keep making different materials like this. You can just make different instances of the material. And you don't have to duplicate it either. So we're going to create a material instance. And I'm just going to call it M1 glitter texture. And we'll open that up and you'll see that it has the same things that you'll see that it has the same colors and size and everything as the material that you made over here. But we're gonna be able to affect the colors here. And I'm actually gonna go into the material and make another 3 vector here and convert this to a parameter that will, I'm gonna call this one base color actually. And we'll call this one just fade color. There we go. And I'm gonna connect this one here, so that's also something that you can affect. There we go. We'll just make it purple here in the material. So since I might want to edit these, I'm actually going to convert all of these into different parameters for the material. We're not going to do that in the material function, but here we'll change this and we'll make parameters for each of them. This is in case you do want to control these differently. Oops. Okay, now we want to know what the actual preview value for that was though. It's 2. The preview values that we set in here do work best, but just in case we want to change it in the instance, we're going to want to add it here. Just so that you can if you want to. What was the height ratio over here? 0.05. And one more for the offset. Convert to parameter, and the offset was 3. All right, nice. And we'll save that. So then you have lots of different parameters that you can change as you want when you create different instances of the material. And here you can actually change all of these things back from the material function and in the material that we made. You can change all of the parameters as you want to here with the instance. And you don't have to bother with changing all of the nodes and everything. So you can do it right here in the details panel. So for instance, I might want to change the scale. We'll make it 1. And then if I wanted to actually make this faster, we can try doing this and we'll set it so that you can see what it's doing here. If I turn it back, it goes slower. But here, made it much faster. It doesn't look as nice for this one, so I'll turn it down a bit. But this is if you want to have a smaller object, you can have the glitter show up nicely. You probably want to make it bigger for smaller objects so that it shows up larger on a smaller object. And then we can change the colors here. So let me make something that looks like golden. Yep, so we can make it whatever color we want it to be, basically. But yeah, that all depends on what you're putting this texture on. You can even make it look a bit like snow on a window or ice. Yep, but all of these parameters basically you can change however you want to make the glitter texture look different for any object that you put in there that you want to put it on. So the last thing that I'm going to show you is actually another material that is very similar to this, but we will duplicate it. And this is something that I used when I wanted a material to look more faded on the outside. So here we'll call this glitter texture 2. But so you can kind of see here. Let me go into the viewport and look here. But you can see the edges of the sphere around it very harshly. They're very sharp. So I created another material that has a Fresnel node that actually changes the look and fades the outside so that it looks less harsh. So let's go in and see that. Open this up. So this looks the same here. I'm actually going to turn the scale up again for this one so that we can see the glitter a bit better too on that sphere. There we go. It looks nice and glittery, not too large. But so all you're going to want to do is add what's called a Fresnel node. And I'm going to use the 1 minus function so that it puts it on the outside instead of fading on the inside. We'll connect this here and connect that to our opacity. So you can already see there's this nice fade on the outside now. And you can change these numbers here to make it look differently based on how you want it to be, but this fades it more if you turn it down, and then if it's higher, it fades it a bit less. But now you can see that the edges are nice and soft and a bit feathered, so it doesn't look as harsh. And I'm gonna make this a nice green now, just for fun. Yeah. And then we can add that to our sphere here just to see how it looks. Nice. So when you go in here, you can see that the outside is nicely faded. It's a bit hard to see with the cloudy sky here in the back, but you can still tell that the outside is faded nicely, so the edges aren't very harsh. But yeah, so that's how you make a nice animated glitter material and a couple different things that you can do with it. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video.